spirit right away. But Jack, a lot of the attention is going to be drawn to how the skips are going to come in at the start. How much of that first balcony are they going to do? When and how quickly are they going to get the Opera event going, the RP for that?
Yeah, and a lot of times you will see, you know, as different teams are able to kind of just buy a little bit of time, give their healers just a bit of time to be able to skip ahead, start the Opera event, and then pulling all the trash over to be able to meet up with them here. You're seeing G's just being able to take advantage of Invisibility Potion, Agrimar Stride, very heavy speed-oriented set here, being able to get all the way over, start the RP event, and then as they're able to meet up with the rest of the team, taking care of a lot of this trash here.
Lefty, of course, is already far gone, doing the same thing with that stealth, not having to incur that 10-minute penalty from using the Invis pot. We do see Zyronic back on the Warlock. We see a Mage being bust out for Team Omegasniped. To know in the last series, they actually had a full melee comp with a Rogue and 2 Windwalker, so a bit of a comp change coming here from them. Not shocked to see, as if I'm not mistaken, we are now in that second mat pool for the 23 dungeons, meaning that we do have Blackrock Hold and Arcway available, so we'll have to keep an eye on the teams on how the rest of the series unfolds, but they do have those advantages going in. Of course, Limit also having that Mage advantage with preheat right now.
Well, yeah, and I like, you know, Team Omegasniped's composition, where we did see in the European weekend so many Arcways and VRHs depending on, you know, the composition of the two different teams. So Omegasniped says, well, we'll just take both. And, you know, whenever we get into this 23 bracket here, if one team thinks they're going to be able to beat us with an Arcway when they have the Warlock, you know, we have one too. If someone says they have a Mage, as we've seen preheat to be able to absolutely obliterate bosses in Blackrock Hold, well, we have one too. And I think that's a very balanced comp with the rest of the meta from EU in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly rather be beaten with an Arcway than rather a big wooden plank. Both teams starting here now on the Opera event, the Beauty and the Beast event. Of course, all the kitchen appliances here. I don't know why we keep calling them that. Of course, there's a broom and like a kobold in here, which makes no sense. Nonetheless, they are all involved here. You have to kill one of them at a time before getting access to Coggleston, the final of the kitchen appliances here. Now, the important thing, Jack, as we always discuss, is that once you kill one of them, everybody else heals up back to full. So any cleave that you're doing to try and pad is really not helping outside of wowing the lovely viewers here in Twitch chat.
Exactly right here. As you're seeing both teams taking care of Mrs. Cauldron's first, moving on to Bablet the Broom second. And I gotta tell you, you know, Luminor, you know, while you say, yes, he is a kobold, you know, he's probably the most consistent candle holder we will have, because no one is going to take his candle.
That's true. No one can hold a candle to him. Indeed, Coggleston about to get accessible here as Luminor soon fall for Limit. Not far behind Team Omegasniped as well with that 80% on Luminor, so just a bit in favor of Limit here. We'll expect to see big pulls coming out of the backstage and the lower stage area. We are in the necrotic setting, something that we haven't talked to you about too much, meaning that the tank, every time they get successfully meleeed, will get a stack of necrotic that decreases your healing taken by 3% along with a small dot. So once you get to that 33, 34 stack range, you will be virtually unhealable, but obviously things get way dangerous, way more dangerous before that 33 stack. And especially in this lower Kara setting, Jack, where there's just so much trash here, you're going to see the big pull coming up here, and a lot of DKs like to kind of pre-AMS or anti-magic shell to prevent those stacks from coming in.
Yep, and as you're seeing on the side of Limit, they do have, and of course, their Holy Paladin able to use a Blessing Protection to a similar effect there. Always important, though, if they do choose to use the Blessing Protection first, then nobody else is going to be able to actually attack the mobs until it falls off, because, of course, you know, there is no threat generation when you're having that up, when they have that immunity up. So very important there to always watch out for it as it comes out. You are seeing, you know, being able to take advantage of the Ring of Peace when you're having the double Windwalker monks, having one run with the stun, one with the Ring of Peace, definitely will go a long way in helping, you know, some of the interrupts going out, especially when they're going to have what looks like to be a very large pull coming out here to be able to deal with all the backstage pass.
So we are seeing some issues and some deaths coming over from Team Limit here. Not sure if, well, I would go on a limb here and assume that was not intended for them to die there, but they do have a bit of a falter nonetheless with the 3 deaths. Actually, no, hang on. This is the part of their strategy, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So it is actually intended. I do remember the 3 death counter from last time we saw them, and they end up going on a different route. So this is actually very intended from them, having these 3 deaths. We've seen them do it, I think, twice already in this map. So we'll keep an eye on Limit, but so far everything's going according to plan. They will be doing, if I'm not mistaken, a huge pull here with Morosa's room, plus that kitchen area on the side of the dining room. So totally intended by them. Team Omegasniped now doing the big pull that we were alluding to earlier with everything from upstairs and under the stage. Hadrian doing a good job to get away right away and drop his necrotic stacks as the rest of the team just blow these to smithereens.
Yeah, I love being able to see the mass grip into, of course, those spotlights there, taking advantage of the damage buff going in there and just completely, like you said, obliterating them all in the same window of that mass stun there. So Limit, on the other hand, like you said, pulling all all kinds of trash from Morose's room and parts of the kitchen here. I don't believe we have all of the kitchen coming out just yet there, but they definitely want to make sure they're clearing out as much of it as possible here because they do have about 6.5 minutes before Bloodlust, so it might be looking just to be able to clear out, you know, this plus Morose before they actually do end up going on.
Both of these fire mages just doing so much damage right now. Team Omegasniped opting to pull that front stage area as quickly as possible, and of course some of the Urshers on the side there. Now these not only drop fire hit albums, but they also drop the flashlight as well that you want to make sure that you turn around during, otherwise it will hit you for double damage, but more importantly disorient you, and if that disorient goes up on the tank, there's going to be tears.
And there seems to be tears there for Hadrian, not able to actually get a Death Strike off. It looks like he was, of course, wowed by Usher's hit album there, and of course getting knocked out and being able to take him down here. Very scary to see.
So a lot of damage coming in for Team Omegasniped as we have 2 more deaths on the board from them. This one I can pretty safely say is probably not intentional on their side. Limit looking really good right now. Preheat getting down to 2% HP as he fails to get the dodge off for Crispin's frontal maximum, getting down and proccing that perk as well. Fortunately, no deaths on their side, but a lot of lucky breaks right now. You got to be careful with that frontal from Crispin. They have the 2 CCs onto the dinner guests up on the stage with Druger and Barris right now, so a lot of that melee area denial is cut off, but you still got to be careful with Crispin and to make sure you interrupt Millstripe.
Yeah, always important with, of course, that Will Breaker going out is it will target, you know, one of the ranged players, and since there is only one, it will always be going out to preheat there. So I think he was expecting there to be some kind of grip or some kind of, you know, movement impairment or pushback or something like that onto Crispin to be able to make sure that it wouldn't go out to begin with. But luckily for him, they're able to actually, you know, survive with 2% HP. Very scary there. Although they do have 1 battle res, they really don't want to have to use it right now if they can help it.
Yeah, it's going well for them now. Druger and Bears do break out. There's going to be a lot of damage on the melee. We do see that Ring of Peace go down. Well done by one of the monks there to make sure to just buy them some time, because those monks need to stick onto Morose to get a lot of that damage in. And with that whirlwind constantly coming in and the weapons providing some area denial, it just makes it really tough for the melee. Now, the weapons aren't as dangerous. The range can bait it out and move around. It's really just Bears kind of constantly whirling on top of the melee. You want to just get rid of him as much as you can.
Yeah, I love that positioning there, being able to take advantage of that Ring of Peace, keeping it back so far. You were able to see, I believe, Lip actually just running, or sorry, Trill running out, baiting out Druger's Iron Whirlwind there, so that it's further away from the entire group here. And Jeeth finally, of course, you know, running out of all of the bops and Divine Shields to be able to start immuning all of the Groats. You are seeing Groats finally going out onto the entire group. But at 10%, you're seeing Preheat, of course, taking advantage of his light ice block, taking some stress off of Jeeth, so that way they're able to continue just burning down the boss here.
Yeah, and they do opt to kind of just ignore the last 2 dinner guests. Morose does finally fall for Limit, and we're seeing a huge pull here from Team Omegasniped, along with that Maiden opting not to reset her, so they brought a lot of the trash on top of her, dealing well to stabilize now and just get that first Consecrate on the side of the room there. Important, of course, to also interrupt that Holy Bolt that goes on the tank, and for the melee to be spread out, but Zong does go down, and we have the Cauterized proc on. I'm fired up, the Fire Mage right now, so there's going to be a bit of issue here. They don't have the Battle Res accessible for about 2 minutes now. They're going to need to 4-man the rest of this boss, unless they call a quick wipe and re-pull on the boss, but at this point, I think they're just going to go for the 4-man, Jack.
Yeah, at this point, you know, quarter of the health has already been... Oh,
actually, they're just going to reset the boss. They're not going to wipe it. But nonetheless, there's a lot of time lost. They probably pulled a lot of that trash to the boss with cooldowns to try to get a lot of that effective cleave on top of it. So just a lot of time lost here for them, plus an extra death on the board.
Yeah, and you're seeing Limit, of course, in pulling all of Adaman's room here, getting everything in together. Of course, when you do pull Adaman, you end up pulling all of the surrounding trash there with it. Max doing it well to actually pre-AMS, getting everything in together here to have a solid pull. The big leg sweep coming out, getting everything in stunned all together here. He's doing well to actually stay away, getting himself, you know, max ranged here, to be able to get away from all his mobs, stop the necrotic stacks from going up here. Devotion Aura going up for G the Bell, just make sure that they're able to reduce a lot of that damage that is coming out here, and Max doing very well to be able to kite, get away from everything, and let the Windwalkers and Fire Mage do what they do best.
Yeah, I mean, those mobs just melted, really well done by them. We saw them do this yesterday twice. One of them, of course, didn't turn out so well. They did wipe a couple times doing it. One of them was flawless, and this one goes in that flawless pile there. Great pull by them, and now they're very adamant on pulling Adam in here in just a moment. Have clean access to Midnight, no trash left in the dungeon, which is why you saw them sorry, not in the dungeon, rather in this area, which is why you saw them reset Midnight and get a really stable pull going.
Stable indeed, Ted. Limit, of course, 80% there on Midnight. It's always important to note you want to be able to get him down to 50%, causing Adaman to dismount here, and then you will be able to focus down Adaman, killing him, and then you'll be able to burn down Midnight, which does, of course, heal up every single time that Adaman does either mount up once more, or of course when he dies. So really important here to get the dismount onto Adaman and start focusing him down. You have to watch out for that frontal cone that will apply that mortal strike, and then of course there will be the larger shared suffering that the tank usually will just end up soloing.
Yeah, you certainly don't want, I mean, you can do it with some, you know, kind of try to split the damage with the tank, but usually, especially in a fortified setting, you'll have the Blood DK be able to kind of handle that with a lot of the CDs, especially the Vamp Blood AMS combo. The only things that start to get hairy, don't say anything, Jack, is when the Blood DK gets hit by that Mortal Strike debuff, and as a result gets that 50% health reduction for 10 seconds. No problem here, though. Midnight does reach 100 health again, and Adaman goes over and says, hey, let's remount, let's recombine forces, and you got to get Midnight down to 50% again to re-trigger that second phase. This time, of course, there are a lot of these Spectral Horsies around.
Yeah, at this point, they need to make sure they're staying in close to Adaman's hitbox. That way, you know, of course, the horses will spawn about 10 to 15 yards away from his location. So at that point, you want to make sure you're staying away from you're staying close to the boss, but also watching out very sharply for any of the horses that can spawn, and of course the melee strikes that Adaman can do to any nearby targets.
Adaman should be going down here, and Midnight should follow suit, getting that 100% damage taken and damage done buff for the remainder of the encounter. Should be pretty easy to topple them order. No horsing around for them. Team Omegasniped did finish off Maiden now, and is heading over to Morose's room, soon to have access to that Bloodlust perfectly timed, so that by the time they're done pulling all of the trash here in the dining area for Morose, they will have access to Morose, of course, the boss after, with the Bloodlust.
Yeah, but at this point, you know, Limit is, you know, only needing one more boss. They're that full boss ahead, and while they're a little bit behind in terms of trash, they should be able to make up tons of it as they're going to be heading on towards, I believe it's going to be Maiden's room as they're going through the Spider Wing here.
Yeah, so a lot of spiders here in the Spider Wing, as you'd be very shocked to hear. A lot of this trash you typically don't see. I mean, this is not too uncommon of a strategy, but typically you're seeing more of a traditional route over on Team Omegasniped, dealing with Maiden first, down into Morose's room. These spiders are pretty dangerous, and they have a pretty lethal frontal, which is why you're seeing Maximum kind of move away and make sure none of the spiders are getting that frontal on. They will not turn to the nearest melee doing it. They will continue to chase their highest threat target. So he dips in there, gets the D&D down, a few blood boils, and just runs off, making sure none of the extra ones clip him. Getting a bunch of the trash percentage too, after which they're going to kind of end up at the start of the Maiden hallway, and I expect that they'll do a similar pull to Team Omegasniped, where they pull the entire hallway right into Maiden's room. Yeah,
at this point, you know, they do have, I don't think all of the trash from Maiden's hallway will be quite enough, so they might end up pulling some of the things that are outside of that hallway first, make sure they're able to kind of get their cooldowns back before they end up doing the entire pull. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to just grab everything and be able to move up to it with cooldowns here. Guys, at this point, they are, like I said, about a boss ahead. They do have that nice advantage there ahead of them, so at this point, they need to make sure they're just being able to play cleanly and executing, and you're seeing Team Omegasniped about 89% left on Morose.
Yeah, so they're dealing with Crispin first. Of course, we just have that dangerous frontal. You want to get rid of it. You want to displace. You want to interrupt it as much as possible. It's just such a pain in the butt, especially for this double caster team with Zyronic, and I'm fired up as well, just dealing with it. We see a huge trash pull coming in here for Limit. One of the death does go down for the Holy Paladin. Manages to use one of the battle res right away, get him up. Make sure that this trash does not get out of hand. Team Omegasniped, nice and stable here. Finishes off Ference, and the other two will break out soon, Darius and Druger. And once again, limiting a lot of that melee space. We'll have to see how they deal with that.
At this point, you know, they definitely are just trying to keep their distance here. You have to watch out for, you know, of course, the positioning of all of the whirlwinds that are going to be coming out here that they have to be dealing with. And when they're not able to have that advantage of having, you know, the double windwalkers that Limit was actually loving to run with there, when they were able to, you know, take advantage of that Ring of Peace, keep the Iron Whirlwind away. At this point, Omegasniped just has to do a lot of kiting and a lot of mobility, but thankfully when they're running with, you know, the double range comp, it shouldn't be too impactful to the DPS overall.
We do see that Bloodlust is popped over for Limit for the 4 members, not including the Mage, as the Mage is wearing that legendary ring, which is why you still see a CD timer up on the screen, but also the glowing effect of Bloodlust being present on most of the members in the group. Team Omegasniped still chewing through Morose. Similar fashion, in a similar fashion to what Limit did, they kind of ignored Darius and Druger, try to finish off Morose, and those two will, of course, despawn once that happens. Maiden of Virtue now dropping sub 50% for Limit. They will still have 18% worth of trash to make up after this boss, so it's not completely lights out after that, but Team Omegasniped certainly have their work cut out for them right now.
They really do, and at this point, you know, their only saving grace really is not even going to be the trash, actually. You know, as Limit did catch up quite a bit there, being able to make sure that they're able to get, you know, all of the Maiden's trash being pulled in. They opted not to be able to pull it with the boss there, instead just making sure that they're able to say, hey, we have gotten this far with it, we know we've been playing very cleanly on it, and we've seen in past series that this has been a map they felt very confident on.
Team Omegasniped, I mean, they're going to have to do the big pull here, I think. I think they know they're behind here, so we're likely going to see an immense pull with Adaman going down here. They have 4 deaths on the board. They do have that Bloodlust available. Now, I think they're actually going to sneak past Adaman. Cocky little RP walk there. We do have a death go down, unfortunately, for Zongo. They choose to get him up in just a moment, and they're prepping to, looks like what will be pull the entire room along with Adaman. If they could pull this off, it might be their saving grace for the rest of this dungeon, but they got to hurry up because Maiden of Virtue just went down for Limit, and they only have 18% trash left. Any death advantage that Team Omegasniped has is now gone at 5 apiece. Actually, 6 now, as, oh no, the mage dies right on the pull. Hopefully he didn't pop all of CDs with that, but he's definitely out for the Bloodlust.
Yeah, he definitely lost out on that Bloodlust there. He's getting everything in together. People are driving so low. Luffy just doing whatever he can to be able to top him off. 3 different burning brands going off, having to watch out for, you know, the effect that's going to be having your melee, having to watch all your positioning, of course, getting out of the stables here to be able to deal with it. They are driving Midnight, just getting past the 50%, but Ironic is going down from the Miser, the charge that is going out here. So at this point, they just need to be able to get any kind of damage they can onto Adaman here. They don't have any other Bloodlust available, so Hadrian is just being able to kite around, dodging the Mortal Strike as best as he can here. Or sorry, dodging the Shared Suffering as best as he can here, trying to drop Necrotic stacks going out. It's so scary. They have to take on the rest of the boss 1 DPS down.
Yeah, I mean, no battle res indeed, and it looks like Limit is going to take that first match, and I would say a fairly decisive match. You know, I mean, well played by Team Omegasniped, but it was just too little too late by the end of it, and having to get themselves in that position in the first place, Rob, is really what kind of crushed it at the end.
Yeah, and I like seeing Limit there performing well. You know, obviously they are coming off a situation that was certainly very frustrating for them, and when we saw them on the remake, they did not look like the same team that we saw in the first go-around. So seeing them have that night off, you know, have the ability to compose themselves and collect themselves, they're definitely looking like that dominant team we kind of expected to see. Omegasniped definitely... I would say I agree it's dominant, but I think they kept it close enough. Certainly the deaths were kept to a minimum. There were certainly some careless ones that came in by the end, but I kind of wonder how much of that maybe have been spurred on realizing they were in a position where they had to kind of hurry up. But overall, thus far, it seems like this is going to be a fairly even series, although Limit certainly with the advantage at the moment. Yeah,
and Limit really showing their chops there, being able to actually have the very strong showing in lower cares. And like you said, you know, they really wanted to be able to come back into this series, start taking it off, you know, the win, just getting that first series done. And like you said, they did have very strong showing previously, you know, and so being able to show that consistency across the board going into the next games is really what you want to be seeing for a team that's going to be pushing and trying to get into those grand finals.
All right, Big Papa, what do you want to see Team Omegasniped do?
Boy. They have one saving grace here. They don't have the mage advantage because both teams have a mage, so it's going to be just a battle of who can steal the Arcanist stacks fastest and, you know, best. They have their saving grace in the form of Arcway, but the problem is that's only one, right? That's only one counterpick dungeon. If they end up winning the next map, I mean, they're just, I think at this previous map, you're right, it was actually almost equally sloppy on both sides. Of course, 3 of the 6 deaths on Limit were intended with that strategy. I think they just they had a better strategy. They had a better pathing in favor of Limit on that map, and that's really what won it for them at the end. So it's hard to say what can they do. Play better? I don't know. You know, I mean, it's just...
I mean, look, that is... We joke, but in something like this tournament, execution is so important. Just hitting the buttons correctly, super important. So maybe playing better is just the way they get back into this series, but don't go anywhere. We will come back after this short break. Will Limit be able to tie it up, or will Team Omegasniped ante up and get an advantage in the series? Team Omegasniped needs to get the win in order to continue to stay alive in this tournament, and they're going to have to do it in the Arcway with the volcanic affix. Arcway certainly not a strange map. It's one we've seen a fair bit of.
No, not at all, and I'm not surprised to see this. I mean, we just alluded to earlier, they have the advantage of that Warlock coming into this. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of backtrack for a second. So we were talking about what can they do better, and, you know, I kind of joked around and said play better, and I know we kind of like to meme like that, but the problem is they're just not in a great position right now. We always talk about this advantage winning the first map. They're in a great position for this map. They have the choice, they have the Warlocks. You're expecting that they're going to come out of this map winning it. They've probably practiced it with that Warlock, but it's going to be a really tough time, and that's kind of where the joke came in. But the truth is they're going to have a really tough time on map 3. Their one potential saving grace was the Mage, but it doesn't matter because the other team has a Mage. They've probably practiced the other maps, but it's not going to be their choice. So after this map, we'll have to see. But of course, first, let's focus on the Arcway.
Yeah, certainly a tall hill for them to climb up upon, but we'll see if they're equal as we are going to hop into the match now. Again, Limit's going to be looking to close this out. They want to go 2-0. They want to move on. They have a long road ahead of them to get back to the upper bracket. Gentlemen, take it away.
Very interesting. Hi, Ted. How's it going? Very interesting. I actually like the Arcway pick quite a bit here because a lot of teams have been just practicing Blackrock Hold like crazy here. And when you're having two teams that are having the mages, a lot of times you have that kind of expectation of saying, oh, yeah, we're probably going to go to Blackrock Hold in some capacity here. But at this point, I don't think there's going to be too much of an advantage either way if it does come to that, if there is a game 3.
I'm not going to lie. I would love to see a BRH come up anyways, just with the clash of the mages going on both sides. That'd be pretty fun. But all eyes on this Arcway first, as Limit does run in with the tank death as their skip past these goos at the start, which are just a pain in the butt to deal with. They take a while, they split, they don't award much percentage, which is why you saw them kind of pause there, dancing around on the screen for a moment, waiting for that spirit to go by. But we see a big pull coming here from Team Omegasniped. Huge pull. Now, keep in mind for those at home, it's not a very traditional routing on this map because at home you're used to, of course, the RNG of the Arcway either opening up to the left or to the right. Here at the tournament, we have it always open up the middle, so the teams will have to either go left or right after they clear out the middle area, which is usually not done. And of course, I do assume for Team Omegasniped, they'll immediately, as quickly as they can, head over to the left and take their Warlock advantage by enslaving that Chaos Bringer.
Yeah, very important to be able to take advantage of that. You're seeing preheat going down on the side of Limit here. G doing what he can to make sure he's stabilizing this pull. And this is such a much more deadly pull. They are opting to use the battle res. I'd like to see that out of that because they finally are getting everything grouped up together here. They need to make sure they're actually going to be able to neutralize this because the skip that they did to actually you know, get past a lot of those early goos, like you were saying, is relying on somebody else dying for them, so they really cannot afford to kind of have that kind of sloppy play. And while there wasn't huge damage coming out of preheat there, I think it definitely was necessary to make sure they're able to continue going on throughout the system.
No, I mean, they're always going to skip that first pack. They head downstairs now to the spider area on Limit side. Actually, on both sides, you do see that Team Omegasniped, instead of aggroing the boss right away, they grab that Chaos Bringer. That is just a huge advantage. Now, for those at home who don't know what we're talking about here, the Warlock can enslave one of those Chaos Bringers, which frequently provides a large haste and damage buff to one of the players, and you could just keep it enslaved the entire dungeon. So essentially one player will be getting almost permanent Bloodlust for the rest of the dungeon on top of all their other abilities, CDs, and the usual Bloodlust coming up. Preheat getting quite low there again. No death over on the side of Limit as Team Omegasniped is getting ready to either pull the Spider Boss here, or I believe they might actually be rearing up to do the skip and do deal with Fellord's a call first.
Yep, as you're seeing Luffy, of course, you know, kind of grayed out there, kind of standing away from everybody else here. It really just shows, you know, indicative of having that skip going on there, because you don't really need to, of course, have that seer, you know, need much healing going on, because you are able to line of sight the worst of the damage that's going out there. They might be able to get the mass res out onto the whole team here, but they really need to make sure they're able to get this seer down and then pray that they're going to be able to
This is a really big problem because Zyronic died. Zyronic is the one enslaving that Chaos Bringer in the first place, which is why it's now free and casting on everyone. Now, they did die a bit earlier than intended because we already have Luffy kind of stealthing around the corner, getting ready to res them on top there. So they lost a bit of damage. Fortunately, Zyronic was, you know, nothing was too costly in the end. They didn't wipe before killing the rest of the mobs, but that Chaos Bringer you're not supposed to kill. You do want it alive for after the boss, but they did end up dying a bit early, and it cost them a bit of time on that seer. Fortunately, nothing got too out of hand, as we do see Luffy here, we alluded to, already had stealthed around the entire Demon Wing up onto the platform, the balcony there, and will be rezzing the 4 players that killed the seer, died voluntarily, and are getting rezzed upstairs. Then they'll do, of course, that kind of dangerous, scary pull. I'm not sure if they'll do it with or without Zakal, but they do have access to that Bloodlust.
Yep, thankfully they were able able to, of course, reach Zyronic there and Zongo as well. I don't think it's going to be too bad actually keeping that Chaos Bringer alive on the other side, because it was going to have to stay alive, be right outside.
No, that was certainly on purpose, so they could grab it on the way back to the spider boss. But first we'll have to deal with Zakal, and immediately they grab the Chaos Bringer up here, as we were saying, but they grab Zakal plus the Seer plus the Fellblade here. A lot of damage that's going to be going out on the group. The tank has to make sure to get a grip on that Prophecy of Doom, otherwise it's going to be a ton of AoE damage, and to make sure not to pull that trash pad on the side. That's
right, very important. On the left side of your screen, you're seeing the patrol actually going back into the tunnel. It does step out quite a lot into that room there, so being able to move themselves further towards the edge of the this right side of the room here, staying safe, while it does kind of cut the room in half for you, it does make it a lot easier when you're able to dodge past a number of these demons here. Limit on the other side is actually just waiting, kind of buying themselves enough space, enough time to get Jeeth through with, of course, his invisibility potion and his speed set on, because at that point you do need to be able to kind of skip past it, and unfortunately when you're not a Rested Druid, you're not able to actually just stealth and have that prolonged duration to be able to get around everything all at once.
Yeah, so of course that's another small advantage in favor of Team Omegasniped, having that Resto Druid there. You saw that Tiger's Lust go up from the Windwalker as Jeeth kind of ran up as quickly as they could, bubbled at the end of their invisibility potion, drops that pylon down and gets ready to res everybody on top of the balcony. Of course, it takes a lot longer for Limit to do all this without the kind of comp that Team Omegasniped has. So Call already down to 60% on the main screen here on the right side of the screen with Team Omegasniped. They're doing really well. They handled the trash no problem. The only 4 deaths on the board are the intended ones after the first Seer died on the stairs near the spider boss. Now, let's talk about this boss just a bit here. He does have this kind of wave. Oh, I'm fired up, getting so low there from the AoE stomp. He does have this shadow wave that leaves the residue on the ground in a line, as you see on the side of the screen. It does target one of the range. Want to make sure you're not kind of dissecting the room just too much. Give space to the melee and the tank, but also that AoE Stomp Jack is so dangerous for 2 reasons. One is the damage it does, but also you get punted backwards, and you certainly don't want to end up in one of those spires on the ground.
Yeah, you're seeing here, everyone is actually even dropping the spires into the middle of the room, those dark fissures, making sure they're able to put them back over there, while then they're able to kind of hug the wall there from the knockback that will come out soon afterwards. The amount of burst damage onto the entire party is so heavy there, so you're going to be seeing, defenses being popped, rotating through externals and some of the more squishy targets like I'm fired up there, and of course everybody dropping into, the defensives, bear form, any kind of cooldowns they can rotate through, because it can be such a pain to actually go out and deal with here.
So they're doing well. Here's a call now down to 14%. A lot of damage coming out of the group, which is really not surprising to see because they have the advantage of that Chaos Bringer from Zyronic, being able to enslave that demon. I know Rich is listening somewhere. I'm not going to do that voice. That's just horrible. Limit now dealing with the trash separately from Zakal, as we saw Team Omegasniped did the opposite, saved a bit of time, but that's also because they were able to get the enslave on the Chaos Bringer. A death coming in on preheat as well.
Very interesting to see that they actually haven't even used Bloodlust yet, and that was one of the nice things you were seeing out of Omegasniped, was they actually were grabbing all the trash, going into Zakal with it, and being able to quickly eliminate it there. So I think that was one of the big advantages that Omegasniped has. They have their Lust on cooldown about almost 3 minutes exactly faster than their opponents here. So depending on how much more quickly this instance will go here, it will be kind of interesting to be able to see, how much more impactful that will be, being able to have it on for maybe one more boss before the final one here.
Team Omegasniped grabbing the Chaos Bringer that they kind of left at the beginning there as we were commenting on it, pick it up again to make sure they get the buff for the rest of the dungeon, and are now heading over to the larger part of the spider trash, which spawn after you kill the small spiders. So you just kind of get increasing size of spiders. You go small, medium, and then the large boss spawns at the end. A lot of damage coming in here from I'm Fired Up. A huge damage from the Fire Mage, actually. They
55
absolutely
million.
Melt, destroy all of the spiders, and get ready for the boss to spawn in the middle of the room, who's ever so rudely interrupted from surfing the World Wide Web.
One day. Omegasniped here engaging with Naltira. Always important to have, the light spread that's going out between Zyronic and, of course, Fired Up. Choosing kind of different points as if you would in directions on a compass here as to where you kind of want to have, your safe spot going back to here. Always important because you do first have to deal with the blink strikes going off. They will usually just be targeting the range first and almost always be hitting the melee second in Zongo. So always having that strafe, always being able to quickly move out of the way of the blink strikes is very important. Then you'll also be having the Tangled Web that will drag 2 players into the boss, and they need to be able to actually spread themselves out, break the chains at about 30 yards, or they'll be taking some very large ticking damage.
Now, she does also spawn those gaseous clouds that you see on the side. If players stay within it, not only do you get some damage, but there's also a huge increase on the cooldowns of their abilities, and I believe a huge decrease to haste as well, so kind of a double whammy there. Zongo gets clipped there by that blinking strike, no death on their board. The last mechanic that you have to worry about is really just the spawning of a small Mana Fang, a small spider. Nothing to be too worried about. But if it does live too long, much like the trash, it can actually jump and root a player. And the last thing you want to get is a root on you when the blink strikes are happening or when the players get gripped together for that beam in the middle. So you want to make sure you kill that Mana Fang a bit faster.
Yeah, but at this point, Limit is, of course, taking down Zakal down to 18% here. And, of course, you do have to keep on watching out for those blink strikes there. We've seen a couple times where Zongo is getting clipped, and it's very easy for Melee to get clipped onto that second cast there. So a lot of times you will see, if you're able to rotate as a healer through different externals, you know, if you're going to bark him on one, fell shield him and run another, because sometimes even when you are strafing through it, you still can get hit through even by the blink strikes. And at this 23 level, we're kind of on the borderline between the possibility of it one-shotting you.
Especially in a tyrannical setting. I mean, there's a lot of damage coming out of these bosses. There's a reason why you're seeing it take so long for them to kill them. This is a 5-boss dungeon, so it's a bit of a longer grind for these players. Limit finally downing Zakal, the first boss. They will go back into Naltira's room where Team Omegasniped is now. They will say hello, but they won't actually because they're on the same instance. And they'll get ready to pull the same spider boss. First, they have to deal with the medium spider trash that we saw earlier. Would expect that pre-hit absolutely destroys it, especially +2 Windwalker monks. That should die immediately. A death over from Zongo, so as we were saying earlier, finally does get caught. They do have to use that battle res and get the 5th death on the board.
Yeah, it's so easy, like I said, due to the melee to start going down there, that even if, you know, sometimes you will have people being able to dodge it here, like you're saying Zongo able to do very well this time, sometimes you're just not able to move quick enough or just not able to actually dodge it in time there. So very scary to see that, you know, that death going down, but thankfully they do have one more battle res left available to them. Limit, of course, just now engaging with Naltira.
Naltira just about to fall here for Team Omegasniped. So, I mean, they burn her down worse than the tacos I just ate earlier in the back room. They're just horrible. Team Omegasniped now moving back up to the hallway, getting ready to go to Korstalax, the 3rd boss of the dungeon. And we've actually seen some teams kind of go around, grab Ivanir first, and then go back to Korstalax. Technically speaking, the 4 bosses in this dungeon before spawning Vandoros at the end are all optional orders, similar to Eye of Ashara, which is why you kind of saw them go the long way for Zakal first, then into the Spider. A lot of it comes down to cooldown timings for, well, your offensive cooldowns and, of course, for Bloodlust, too. Yeah,
and it's always important to make sure you're able to, you know, reduce any kind of backtracking if possible here. You know, we want to be able to get, of course, all these mobs in together very easily because you do have, of course, those spheres that will give you basically a pseudo Bloodlust here. And when you're able to take advantage of another Bloodlust, you might as well pull all of it in with the boss here. Korstalax being activated here. You are seeing the suppression field going out, dealing a huge amount of damage here and forcing Fired Up out, of course, from his Lust circle there. Very important to make sure you're watching out for that. He will also, Korstalax, spawning some of those orbs that are dealing quite a bit of damage to anybody in proximity with them. And then finally, you will have the Quarantine, trapping one target in the Crystal Shard that needs to be clicked on by another player in order to break him out.
Yeah, unfortunately, that orb just denies both of those haste bubbles right away. It spawns right in between both of them. Not, you know, the most favorable position for Team Omegasniped there. They're kind of forced out of them early, losing 50% haste from those bubbles for about 10 seconds there. So a bit of damage lost, but they're doing really well. And I mean, this room is particularly dangerous in terms of trash. There's a few mana spikes, arcane spikes that go out on the tank, and of course there's a lot of Eye of the Vortex interrupts that need to go out. A lot of dangerous trash here. They just AoE grip everything together, get those bubbles down right away, and absolutely obliterate everything in the room. Just so much AoE damage coming out of this group. And now we continue the grind of Korstalax here. Of course, having a significant amount of health with this tyrannical setting, but the players are privy to a 20% haste buff per stack that you see on their unit frames. Every time these kind of pools go down on the ground, the boss applies 2 stacks to everyone, 40% haste, and you can run through some of the circles on the ground as well to get more haste.
Yeah, and right after, of course, all of these are going down, you will see, of course, the Cleansing Vortex be able to soak up all the rest of those puddles. You are seeing 2 deaths going down on the side of Limit here. They are able to get one of their rogues up. They are able to get Trill up, but preheat is down as the boss is at 20% here. So at this point, they just need to be able to burn the last 20% alone without, of course, their Fire Mage here, and it's going to take so much extra time.
As sneaky as they are, of course, that is a monk, not a rogue.
Oh,
but
sorry.
Trill does go back. It's okay. I mean, leatherwares, they're all the same, right?
Yeah, you know.
So Trill comes back up just to help finish off the remaining 18% of Naltira. Limit having a bit of a struggle there, but nonetheless, they should be able to down the boss. Korstalax now at 33%, another third of the health off from last time we checked in for Team Omegasniped. Doing a good job of everything on the boss, really no problem. But there is just a lot of health to chew through, which is why they're moving so slowly. We keep coming back to the same fact. It's just this 23 tyrannical affix takes a while for this boss. Bit of area denial, bit of damage stopping as well once they get imprisoned in that arcane prison that players need to click them out from. drawing everyone in right now with the Cleansing Force. You want to make sure you move out of that area, of course, before it explodes. Otherwise, you'll likely get one shot, unless you're the tank in this 23 Tyrannical setting.
Yeah, and at this point, they're doing an excellent job being able to actually stay close in together. You're seeing Zongo, of course, bringing out the suppression field, but he will be going right back underneath the boss. Probably seeing Luffy and Fired Up as Ironic kind of collapsing here as the quarantine's about to be going off here. 6% left on Corstalax, as of course they are just going to be able to deal with that last quarantine and then be able to take him down without an issue.
Of Corstalax they will, as they finish off the boss and get ready to move towards Ivanir's room, the last room. Now, the cool thing about this dungeon is each wing of the dungeon has really kind of unique different trash. You have the spiders, you have the demons, you have these kind of mana fiends now, and then we're moving over into a lot of these casting elementals and mana worms now. Big pull coming in here from the Blood Decay, grabbing the worms there, and right away line of sighting or LOSing around the corner, which forces all of the worms to get and pinpoint on one location. The AoE grip coming in now, and we're seeing another death come in on the trash on Limit on the left side. Always keeping an eye on that. G the Bell does go down. They don't have the battle res available. Now they can release because the checkpoint, of course, now is in Naltira's room as they have down that boss, but they opt not. Oh, finally see the release come up now. Perg has procced over there, so things are looking a bit sloppy on Limit side. Team Omegasniped just lights up all of this trash. All of those mana worms go down. Make sure the warp shades don't cast by killing them before they're even able to cast, really, and get some interrupts here on this spirit, as every successful cast she gets off will add a stack to players that not only does damage, but decreases the amount of healing taken by 10%.
Yeah, it's always very important to make sure you're having a strong interrupt rotation, especially because we are in that Raging Affix as well. So not only will successive torments deal additional damage, but when she drops low, she will, of course, be dealing tons and tons of damage. So a lot of times you will see additional pressure being put onto the healers there by actually having to, of course, deal with 2 to 3 stacks at a time of 2 to 3 casts as they reset a kick order. Then you're able to have a consistent kick order to be able to get all those off, be able to deal with all the torment casts as she enters that enrage phase here.
Everything's being pulled for the remaining trash leading up to Ivanir. Some teams actually like to grab those 2 Arcane Anomalies on top of Ivanir just to kind of get that extra bit of damage. Not really a benefit in their opinion for Team Omegasniped as they grab the Arcane Anomalies along with the Warp Shades and small handful of Mana Worms remaining. Completely destroy everything there, no problem, especially with the added benefit and buff from that still enslaved Chaos Bringer on the side. Now they move up, getting ready to pull the penultimate boss, Ivanir, here in this Tyrannical setting. A bit of a caster boss, doesn't really melee the tank at all, just keeps casting Arcane Blast. And sometimes the volatile magic comes up here on 3 of the players. You want to spread out, make sure not to clip your players with the explosion by the time it goes off. As you can see, it does a ton of damage. And Jack, apparently there's some triangles on this fight as well. Oh,
I love the triangles part. As you're seeing them placing them down right here, they do need to, of course, be cutting out these triangles and make them as small as possible here. And tell me, what kind of triangle are you seeing right now?
They actually almost formed an isosceles there, but I believe in the end it did end up being a scaling, so we'll have to keep an important eye on what kind of triangles they tend to overlay on that, because that will determine the outcome of this dungeon.
It very well might. Geometry class is in session. Be sure to listen up here. They are opting to use their Bloodlust here, just falling off for Team Omegasniped here, so they will not have it for the final boss coming into this. Always important to be able to watch out for those volatile magics. They do deal tons and tons of damage here. Limit, of course, dealing with Corstalax down to 75% here. They are working on the side of Omegasniped, working on close to an equilateral until, of course, the top of it just collapsed and,
I mean, a most hideous scaling once again on the side of them. I'm definitely favoring Limit in this one. Hopefully they get some nice equilateral triangles going by the time they get to Ivanir, but they really got their work cut out for them at this point. They're still working on Corstalax, just now reaching 66%. Ivanir already at 50% for Team Omegasniped. Now, they do have 21% trash left, so Limit does have favor in terms of trash clear percentage, but trash, especially in this Tyrannical dungeon, really not too much concern, honestly. There's a lot of Mana Fiends left at the end that you can just group up together, AoE down, doesn't matter if you do 5 or 10 of them, not too much danger.
Yeah, and you're seeing there, Zeranik almost getting knocked, of course, into that other side of the triangle there as they are forming. Just, we're not getting back to those equilateral triangles, and let me tell you, Ted, I'm quite disappointed in that performance.
I mean, Isosceles coming up all over the place. They're kind of improving on the side. Ivanir now at 35% HP. Now, Ivanir will occasionally blink to his Mana Crystal and start to channel, as we're seeing right here. It's important to interrupt him right away, as they well did there. As soon as he starts to channel for too long, the longer he channels, rather, the more damage and haste stacks he gets, something that will be pretty devastating for the tank, but not only the tank, the rest of the group as well, getting a lot of damage with, of course, those explosions, and accidentally, if you clip any of the corners of these triangles that they're forming, they do tick immediately, so you want to move out of them as they lay down, but they do well there to interrupt Ivanir as he blinks away, now down to 20%, whilst Corstalax on the left side of the screen is at 24 for Limit.
Yeah, and at that point, we are seeing, again, that longer kind of drudge edge through Corsolex because it does have so much HP left available to them. Another volatile magic going out on the side of the team Omegasniped there, dropping everybody constantly so low there. It was a very good job by Luffy to make sure that they are staying topped off and in that strong position there. And up there we're coming. I'm getting so hopeful for it, but again, it looks like we're getting even closer to the right triangle coming up here.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. Ivanir is going to be going down here in just a moment. 4% for Team Omegasniped, after which they will immediately get out of this dungeon. Now, some teams out of this room like to kind of continue and go back to the middle, pick up some of the trash in that area, most of which has already been killed, though, for Team Omegasniped. The other ones will usually go left. And what happens here is there's 2 more Warp Shades and a ton of various Mana Fiends. Really not too dangerous of a pull. Wouldn't be shocked to see a pretty big pull here, completing their 21%, after which they'll kind of snake their way downstairs around the what is usually kind of the rat wing or the Quinn wing in this dungeon, and then get ready to pull Vandross, the last boss.
Yeah, I love that they're able to do, you know, they're able to make sure they're getting, of course, the Sky Step potions, be able to kind of bring everything in together. They're all staying back. They're actually forcing the line of sight here, that in case, you know, the Warp Shades are having their casts going off, they're able to get interrupted. The Match Grip comes out by Hadrian to make sure they're getting everything in, getting, of course, those pulses interrupted from the Warp Shades, and they're able to get all of them kicked and start rotating through, of course, their Arcane Torrents while they last.
Team Omegasniped now at 89% trash, trying to finish up everything they can. They do need a bit more than this, though. I think this will only take them to about 93, 94, 94. There it is on the board. They do have that last pack there just in the distance. Should be the remaining percent they need. And they're a bit closer to that central exit at this point, so they'll probably continue back down the stairs towards Vandross after that. Limit now at 92% already. I mean, dare I say they might have too much trash at this point, especially with the Forlorn Spirit that they just pulled there. So we'll have to see exactly how much they need to kill. But I think with that, plus even every trash, they might overcap.
They might overcap, but this also is, you know, kind of typical to what we've seen from Limit throughout this tournament there, where a lot of their focus has been almost entirely upon that first map, followed by the counter pick here. And you know, if they, for example, if Lower Karazhan was not the first map in this series, you know, you might be seeing them going back to leaning on that if we were having some other dungeon here. Because at this point, when they're saying, they're acknowledging that, hey, both teams have practiced a ton on Blackrock Hold here. So if we were able to have another counter pick that would be available to them, they might end up opting for that. But at this point, you know, it definitely shows that they're not as polished on limit side for Arcway as you're seeing Omegasniped just getting into the 99% and being all set for Vandross.
Right, you are. I mean, Limit having a couple more deaths there. They do have the checkpoint, of course, Lax's room, just around the corner from where a few of those players died, released right away and come to help kill the rest of the anomaly. Now, Vandross is aggroed here for Team Omegasniped. They do have 5 deaths on the board, for those, of course, being intentional, and they don't have access to their Bloodlust. Now, it is important to note that we're seeing the 99% trash on the screen, but not to worry, because remember, they do have that Chaosbringer enslaved that they will release at the end of the fight and kind of either cleave along with the boss or just kill quickly after the boss, so not too much trouble for them. The trick here really will be to make sure that they release the enslave right before the transition happens at 50% and CC it, likely with paralysis, and that means they will have 1 minute on the clock to get back to Vandross during that transition period, which I believe now is normalized into Naltira's room, and as soon as they're back, they will re-enslave it and continue the second phase.
Yeah, it's always very important because Naltira's room is usually one of the longer routes.
I think it's the worst, quite frankly.
I do think it is the worst, but at the point where we're having everything normalized, when we're having, say, you know, Lower Karazhan forced into the Opera event, we were having some of the most difficult mobs being forced into Inquisitor and Vault of the Wardens. When you're at least able to have the same expectations every single time, that's the biggest thing you want to be able to see out of this.
Vandross now to 63%. Now, a couple of his abilities that we do have to discuss. He does do a frequent cast that you can't interrupt, but every time you miss the interrupt, the accelerating blast there, he will actually gain a stack of 5% damage, something that mages sometimes like to use to their advantage and spell steal it from the boss. Not seeing that there, though, as he absorbs it. The other thing is that you will constantly be offset with your real estate as those kind of explosive geodes force themselves on the ground. Players will have to move a lot to make sure that they're dodging that. Lastly, we're going to see these kind of bombs in the middle that will push you away with their shockwave. You need to blink or run through those waves to kind of stop the opposing force. We do see the Chaosbringer there, well dropped and paralyzed, as we alluded to earlier, by the monk. They do spawn in Naltira's room. Oh my god, it's like we know everything. They do spawn in Naltira's room, and now they will have to deal with a maximum of, well, technically 5 wraiths, but they will deal with 2 wraiths in this hallway, 2 in the next room as well, and then 1 that patrols the main hallway area. But that one, at least 1 or 2 of them they usually skip.
Yeah, but at this point, it's very strong. They're very good to see, you know, Zongo staying back, staying out of course, that pulsing range, because, of course, like you said, the mana wraiths that are out here will deal a huge amount of damage to anybody standing within melee range of them. So, you know, they definitely want to see the melee staying away from it, and any of the range players just standing very far back. At that point, they actually just let the mana wraith actually just stun Hadrian, and then at that point, they're just because the Mana Wraith is just rooted in place when they're channeling that cast, they just let him stun him and then be able to kill him very quickly as they got the Dispel off onto them, and we're moving on here. So they have one more they have to be dealing with. They might just try to be pulling it over into the corner off to the side. That way everyone's able to just move their way past, still adding up a little bit of extra damage and then getting themselves back into position, because like you said, their window of time is quite limited here to be able to get back to, of course, that Chaos Bringer.
Yeah, so the Chaos Bringer we actually saw in the far distance did, in fact, break out of the CC and spawned a small imp portal on the very far side. Chaos Bringer brought back in, immediately enslaved, there we go, by Zyronic, just to get that extra damage for the end of the fight. They will kill it at the end to obtain their remaining 100%. Ivanir at 44%, similar percentage, but completely different boss. Over on the left side of the screen, 14 deaths on the board for them, looking really dire. I mean, Team Omegasniped came to this looking really polished, like something they practice. Great Warlock play from Zyronic. Advisor Vandross at 33% now, and there's just any moment now they're going to be tying the series up.
Yeah, at this point, this is what you want to be able to have out of your counter picks, those lockdown picks that you will be able to kind of pick up on. But it also is interesting seeing the different strategies from teams as they set up for this. While obviously Omegasniped has played a very strong game here, we've seen in the past where teams have had actually, not strong focus on, other maps besides their counter pick. And even if you are seeing, a simple mistake coming out, they're not quite able to kind of capitalize on it because they weren't as well polished. So that's one of the interesting things going forward into this, because we do look like we're going to be well set up for, maybe a mage off in a Blackrock hold here.
Yeah, certainly don't want any simple mistakes or stupid mistakes at that. Vandross down to 13% now. Should be going down momentarily. As you said, we have the death coming over on Limit side, but I mean, at this point, it's just kind of all she wrote in favor of Team Omegasniped. Not going to be curious to see what Rob's analysis is, both because I respect him a lot based on his hair choice, but also because he has some good input on what these dungeons are.
Wait, can I get in on this casting for a second? Advisor Vandross down to 5%. He is going down any minute. Rich Campbell. Is that?
Well, I will have to get a hearing test after that just happened. Vandross does indeed go down, and my name's Rich Campbell.
Great. Yeah, I feel like in Europe all weekend we were like, show me those 2-0s, like show me like those crazy series where for the Americas I'm just kind of at the point it's like, you know what, I'll take something that follows the format of like you win the first map, you lose the second, and then you're going to win the third. And I mean, that's exactly what we saw here. It came down to Team Omegasniped made the pick, they had the composition that lined up better, and they executed. And I like to see that. They executed it really well, whereas Limit definitely had some spotty deaths there that you definitely wouldn't have wanted to see come out from them. But again, it's all going to come down to this third map, and in the Mage Off, I feel like, me personally, I'm giving that advantage to Limit. I think overall Limit has shown the better Mage play, but gentlemen, what do you think?
I mean, it's hard to say. We've seen so many BRHs at this point with mages, and people are just kind of writing it off as, oh, this is boring, the mage is going to win. We've seen already a couple of cases where that doesn't happen. Yeah. They just messed it up royally. But this would be, I mean, if they do choose it, this would be the first time we see a mage on mage action, and it's gonna
at least today. It would definitely be the first time today.
At least today, yes. Well, no, for BRH, have we seen any mage versus mage?
Maybe once.
We did in Europe. We did in Europe.
We did. Okay, so we did once, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see which one plays better. Some of that is also based on the group support that they're getting, the pulls that they're doing, making sure you get that control undead right away, making sure, of course, the DK's tanking when they drop the control undead as well, because somebody else taking those arcane blasts to the face. But it'll be interesting, and I think it'll be great. We have two really good will likely be arcane mages coming into that dungeon if they choose it. Right.
Obviously, they are allowed to switch specs.
I'm very interested actually in seeing it, as you mentioned, because when you're looking at teams that do stream and actually do broadcast some of their practice here, we were seeing on the side of Omegasniped where they were fine with streaming a lot of their intro games. They were fine with streaming, like the Blackrock Holds, the Mauve Souls, things that they had to perfect to begin with coming into it. I think in a lot of ways it does highlight what you mentioned yesterday about that kind of kiss curse from Europe, where they say, oh, actually, we thought we had a really good time for this, and now we actually can adjust our strategy to get back onto it. And from what I had seen, it seemed pretty inconsistent, but they did spend a lot of time practicing off stream to be able to kind of perfect the strategy. So I think if, from what I've seen so far, I would definitely give Limit the advantage, but you just can't count out Omegasniped.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of open questions still to be answered with the remainder of the series. It is going to come down, of course, that third map, so don't go anywhere just yet. Will we be heading to Blackrock Hold for that Mage Off, or does Limit have something else in mind for us? We will see on the other end of this short break. Don't go anywhere. More Mythic Dungeon Invitational coming up. heckin' bamboozled because we are not going to Blackrock Hold, despite all the mage representation in these compositions. We are actually going to be heading over to Cathedral of Eternal Night. Now, Jack, again, we talked about the upside of Blackrock Hold for these compositions. Why are we going to Cath?
Oh, Cath actually makes a lot more sense as they were kind of preparing to say, yes, we have Blackrock Hold in the pool. We already know that, you know, our opponents have practiced extremely hard for this map, but Cathedral is represented in the 23 selection of dungeons and the 24s. So when you're able to actually have both of those there, they've already practiced it at a higher level here. So at this point, they're saying, well, this is going to be our counter pick going forward here, and we know that, you know, we've practiced this a ton, and this can be our counter pick going forward intentionally for the 24s, but because it shares in those two map pools, we'll be able to pick it here and be able to pull out the win.
I think that does make sense to me when you think about the preparation routine for a team like Limit, which was certainly looking to go the distance. They've, you know, it's more than just practicing Maw and maybe upper and lower Karazhan. It's also you're going to be practicing some of the deeper maps as well. You know, going into this, do you think Omegasniped is going to have an issue with this map, or do you think it's something maybe they practiced as well?
No, I'm sure they've practiced it probably for the same reasons. These really seem like the kind of teams, and Limit especially, as you mentioned, that, you know, is really not satisfied being just the second seed. Even if they get that qualification for LAN, they want to be the best, they want to make a statement, and it just goes hand in hand with what Jack was mentioning about them just being really well-rounded in terms of some of the dungeons that they're picking. So Cathedral for both sides, I mean, it's something that you'd be tested in the Stage 2 and Stage 3 of the regional, so wouldn't be shocked that both teams have a good strategy going into this.
Yeah, certainly like this pick more than maybe resting on any kind of gimmicks. It's certainly something where I think clean, overall better play is going to out, but we're going to go ahead and hop into this. So again, the series on the line here, whichever team wins this map is going to be moving forward in the lower bracket. Again, the goal there is to make it back up to that upper bracket and to make it to the global LAN. It's all going to happen here in Cathedral of Eternal Night.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Snoop.
Why are you laughing?
You know, it's just a pleasure to always be able to cast with you. Let me tell you.
Saw that there's a tree boss in this.
Oh man.
Limit now popping. Did they stealth actually right away? Yeah. So they CC'd, pop that Ring of Peace to get them some space, and they're all immediately popping, or almost all of them popping their invis pots and running down while Max picks up a lot of these mobs and heads down the hall himself. Likely because one of them is either stealthing or he'll just get rezzed upstairs. Team Omegasniped with a more traditional route here at the start, pulling the mini boss and a lot of the trash at the start. After which I wouldn't be shocked to see. Actually, we're already seeing Luffy well out of range, going upstairs, dying, and will res them up on the balcony.
Yeah, but in here, they're actually just hiding away in one of these extra side rooms here. That way, when Duels Act, the mini-boss, does end up coming around, they will be able to kind of dodge past him here. So you just have these little side rooms that aren't too frequently utilized here, but you are able to kind of just open the doors, close the doors here, take advantage of them, and that way you will be able to continue, of course, on throughout the dungeon here, while also dodging the mini-boss, which just has a ton of HP.
Yeah, I mean, quite the John Cena, now you see me, now you don't moment, as the boss just had no idea they were there. They closed the door, opened the door, and successfully ran out, pulling some of that dangerous trash halfway up the stairs, and of course that big pull right before that stairwell that a lot of teams actually skip. So a lot of interrupts needed here, a lot of frontal damage going on in the tank, and a lot of linear damage going out towards the group that you want to be watching out for. Now, these fell bubbles on the ground, similar to the ones that you see in Arcway, they do give you a 50% haste buff, but at a cost. There's a pretty heavy fire dot that occurs as you stand within it, so not really worth it as much for players these days to stand there. Team Omegasniped, as we alluded to earlier, get some of that trash done at the beginning of the dungeon. All die on purpose, the five of them rather, and are rezzed upstairs by Luffy in Agronox's room, the first boss.
And as you're seeing here, Limit is, you know, kind of skipping through about half of this. They're not having quite as large of a run around there going out by it, but it also means that they're going to have a far less deaths to be able to actually incur in the process here. So, you know, Omegasniped, of course, just killing out all the trash except for that mini-boss, and then just jumping off of the cliff into the center of the Tomb of Sargeras here, being able to move on throughout it. And it's important to note, we do deal with Sanguine and Volcanic here, so it's very important to be able to watch, you know, when so many different mobs have just differing health positions, they have, you know, differing health levels, be able to have the constant kites, and of course, I think it really will favor Limit quite a bit when they are able to take advantage of those Ring of Peace.
Yeah, it's really important to backpedal here with all of these flowers, and as you drop that Sanguini, Crostini, Zucchini, you want to make sure that the mobs are out of it, because any mob that sits within those pools, which do stack if you kill multiple mobs in one spot, will heal for, I believe, 3 or 5% per second per stack, and also do damage to players. Now, they kind of restricted a lot of their space here, Limit did, with killing the Sanguine, the mobs there with the Sanguine around the edge of that center garden area, because they can't pull Agronox there anymore unless they pull it 1 minute later after those pools despawn, but I'm sure they're going to pull it much faster than that.
Yeah, at this point they are, of course, just having those extra little flowers that they do have to cleave down. Bloodlust does go up for Team Omegasniped, having a little bit of an advantage in terms of just the extra timing they're getting here. But at this point, like you said, they have to make sure they're pulling it away from the Sanguine that comes down here, getting, of course, all those flowers grouped up, funneling all the way into the boss here as they're able to get everything cleaved down. We've seen a lot of times where it has been a pain for when the third affix selected has been explosive, when you're having to deal with a lot of the flowers that are, of course, spawning explosives very far away here. Thankfully, they don't actually have to worry about that, and they're able to just make really quick work of them and get strong cleave damage when everything funnels in. Yeah,
you're getting a lot of the slows coming up on the flowers as they come in. Definitely don't want them reaching their target. They explode for a substantial amount of damage. You're seeing those death and decays go down, likely the slow ring from Zyronic as well at the moment. Just anything to slow them down. You also have the Ring of Peace Denial just in case it gets out of hand. Now, the most dangerous, or one of the most dangerous aspects of this boss really is that succulent lasher that spawns under the boss. You want to make sure that you are stunning it and CCing it as much as you can so that you guarantee that it doesn't get any of its explosions off, because not only does it provide some area denial as we're seeing that green goop on the ground, but it does a ton of damage, not to mention the melees on the tank are even heavier than the boss himself.
Even as, of course, it is very important to know, we were so close to getting through 2 trees, I gotta say. We were so close to getting through 2 tree bosses without any of them, but c'est la vie there. Omegasniped down to 20% here as, of course, Limit's Bloodlust is just falling off now. Omegasniped has a little bit of a lead going into this in terms of equal trash percentage, but there is still going to be, of course, that 15% death differential that they always have to account for going forward here.
Yeah, there's a lot of trash coming up that there will be a lot of trash that you can skip coming up. With monks on both sides, wouldn't be shocked to see that imp, all those imps that run up after Thrashbite are kind of trapped by one of the Ring of Peace from the monks and just gotten a lot of that percentage there. Team Omegasniped pulling well ahead, killing Agronox with 15% left for Limit, as they have a favorable patrol here and all just rush as quickly as they can, kind of dissecting this patrol, heading up the stairs towards Thrashbite's area, where things can get a little messy here, Jack.
They definitely can, as, of course, you do have to deal with all the Sanguine puddles all over the place. And it's not necessarily that, the Sanguine itself is going to be what's killing you, but prolonging the life of so many of these mobs is so dangerous to the entire party here. And when you have to be having a constant cycle of interrupts, stuns, CCs, things like that, it really can become quite problematic, as our good friend Trekkie would say.
Trekkie, rest in peace. Team Omegasniped now pulling everything here at the top of the stairs. They have to be careful. Now, the reason these mobs are particularly dangerous with these affixes is because of actually Sanguini. It's one affix that you really aren't too threatened by, you don't think much of, but the problem is all of these mobs are casters, some of them even hard casters that you can't interrupt, you need to physically move. They do well to kill everything. They're so fast, and at the same time, before Sanguine really has a chance to take on any of them, I think they actually pulled everything.
They did.
But they only have Gazerax left. I mean, huge successful pull here from Team Omegasniped, putting them in a really prime position, but not far behind is Limit now, as they have finished off Agronox and have moved upstairs to do a similar pull, but they're starting a bit slower with only that front room area with the imps.
They're going quite a bit slower here, and it will kind of basically break it into 3 different pulls, unless they want to pull everything in on top of Gazerax. They do have the Ring of Peace they're able to rely on if need be, because I haven't seen it go out for them, for Team Limit just yet here. So that might be an option that will be available to them, to be able to kind of take advantage of that Ring of Peace, putting it right underneath Gazerax if they wanted to, keeping everything away from it, as he does, of course, cast his glare, followed up by that focus destruction, which can be so deadly.
Yeah, it's quite deadly, especially in this fortified setting on a 23. I mean, you're gonna have to get a lot of healing, a lot of defensives out on these players, none of them opting to move out and get range on the boss, which for these casters would unfortunately mean also not DPSing, so it's not worth it for them. You see that tranquility coming out of Luffy, doing really well to keep everyone there healthy and topped off. Gazerax will fall here on the side, spawning, of course, Thrashbite, the second boss of the dungeon, as he comes crashing menacingly down in the middle of the room here. Now, this boss has typically a smaller health pool than some of the other bosses that we see in dungeons, because he is meant to be that kind of bursty, scary fight. He will have a lot of damage coming in on the tank, including this AoE on the ground. If you're trapped in that, then you could just say goodbye to the rest of your HP pool. But Jack, most importantly, the mechanic on this fight is his destruction, his favorable, which I very much appreciate as well, his favorable destruction of the bookshelves on the side of the room.
The unfortunate destruction of knowledge is very important to always watch out for, as he will charge one player, and while you can use like Blessing of Protections or specific immunities to be able to, of course, avoid it entirely, you're not able to have anybody else intercept it like you are able to intercept Smashbite, the brother of Thrashbite. So you have to be taking advantage of those bookshelves to be able to soak up the damage there. But it also will spawn a couple of those arcane books, which can slow, which can mind control, which have a number of nasty abilities tied to them.
Yeah, certainly want to be killing those books, and to my knowledge, they do cast a lot of the slows on from the bookshelf. The biggest problem is the combination of that substantial slow on the players along with the boss's AoE that we saw at the beginning. So you'll need freedoms or some kind of mobility to safely get out of there. Otherwise, you could be trapped in this one-shot mechanic that we're seeing here one more time on Team Omegasniped. But the boss should be falling here shortly. Perhaps one more bookshelf will be destroyed, but they might actually just choose to ignore those books if they spawn.
Yeah, at this point, it really will depend. I mean, you're just seeing Luffy is getting targeted again, so at this point, he's making sure he's getting out of the way of everybody else, and he might as well just dodge it here. The books shouldn't be too bad to deal with because they are fairly light, of course, in that melee section. As long as Luffy's out of range, they could just make sure that they're able to get a quick dispel on his Zongo there, the way he can run out, or they could just have that hard commit and just burn down the boss in that time.
So here's what we were talking about earlier. We're going to see if they trap. Now, about 90% of the imps and the mobs in this next room, there's a lot of them, actually run up the stairs and run off by themselves. We're going to see if they opt to grab all of them. It looks like they will. So they have a great AoE grip there coming from Hadron, excuse me, and they will be dropping likely, I would assume, Ursul's first, followed by maybe a Ring of Peace to make sure that they kill all these mobs. It's important for the trash percentage, but they definitely want to be killing them on their way out of the room because remember, they do drop Sanguine, so if you were to kind of Ring of Peace them too late or stun them too late on top of so many Sanguine piles, good luck killing the rest of the mobs. Excellent job done there by Omegasniped, and they will likely skip, most of this trash leading into Nalasha's room, the Spider Queen.
Yeah, this time they're making sure they don't make a dark slashing mistake, missing out on a little bit of extra trash and ensuring they're going to have all of that trash percentage there. And that's always the important thing is going up to this room is that they've basically vaporized everything on these top 2 or 3 floors, and they will be getting themselves well set up to be able to deal with that little mini boss.
They do indeed vape as they're killing some of these spiderlings on the outside of the room right now. And now the pain in the butt here is really the kind of enforcers that are on top, the 2 spider enforcers along with that patrolling Mage Spider. The Mage Spider does patrol all the way into the room, so they have to be careful if they are to skip it. The Orb Caster right there. If they were to skip it, they have to either CC it when it's at the front of the room, which is where it's patrolling right now, or pull Nalasha really to the back of the room here, as we're seeing at the bottom of the screen, because she does blink to a random player, and you don't want to be too close to that Spider, because she could blink on top of the Orb Caster and get some proxy aggro going. Good route going up by Luffy there, making sure that that patrol stops, and now they're focusing here on Nalasha. There's that first blink we were talking about.
Yeah, it's actually very scary. Have close Nalasha's actually AoE combs coming out there. Ideally, you want to be able to face it towards one wall, towards one area away here. But at this point, because those enforcers don't really give you any trash percentage, and while the Orb Caster is tied to those enforcers, you want to just be able to root it, keep it away from everybody. And while it does cut your room and your space in half, it is well worth it if you're going to be able to guarantee that you're wasting much less time here.
We're just seeing a pretty aggressive pull here from Limit on the left side of the screen that just recently downed Thrashbite as well. They don't choose to skip any of those enforcers or the Orb Caster in the front. They just pull it all right on top of Nalasha. Have to be careful, of course, as we've already alluded to a few times, to constantly back up and kite out of those Sanguini pools, making sure that, especially her, she has so much health, she doesn't get a single tick of that Sanguine. It'd just be detrimental to the aggression that they just showed here on this pull, because eventually they're just going to not only run out of offensive CDs to kill this in time, but the tanks can only hang on for so long. Those poisons that are applied by the small spiderlings stack up to 5, and they do a devastating amount of damage. You've already seen that Lay on Hands get busted out on maximum, and the healer can only dispel once every 8 seconds. They're going to stack up way faster than that with that many mobs.
They can, and you really don't want to have to lean on the monks to be able to add those extra poison dispels. You know, that it should just be so much more inconvenient for the group here. So while they did spend a great deal of time, of course, being able to take down Nalasha here, you are seeing Omegasniped with 3% trash remaining, which they will easily get after they take down Dominatrax here, and sitting pretty going into the boss.
Yeah, Team Omegasniped's looking great here, but you know, Limit's aggressive pull was actually very successful, as Max actually dips really low there. I don't think he procced the Purgatory, as far as I know. Nalasha does go down, giving them the remaining 3% that they need. I'm not sure if that's actually enough. They need to have at least 95% going into the bat area after Dominatrax, so it looks like they just may be a little trash short before they finish the rest of the dungeon. Nonetheless, Team Omegasniped not going to have that problem after they down Dominatrax, the third boss, which they just started on right now.
It might just be that some of these spiderlings, so the first spiderlings that spawn on Nalasha do give percent, but the ones that she spawns later on actually do not.
These are the ones that spawn later on, if I'm pretty sure.
And that's what I think. Yeah. Is what I think is that they actually are the ones that spawn later on, so they would be hurting for that extra trash percentage here. But going into Omegasniped, talking about Dominatrax here, they do take down the first 2 portals that spawn at 90%, and then they are dealing, of course, with that chaotic energy.
Yeah, I want to be careful with the imps on the side there. They're cast, although they seem not particularly dangerous. Those Fell Blasts actually hit for about 4 or 5 mil. Not to mention they melee quite hard, so the tank needs to pick them up right away, and probably needs a bit of support interrupting them to get them over if that Death Grip on a 15-second cooldown is not available for the tank. Doing well there to grab all of the imps together. One of them was banished by Zyronic, as we saw earlier, likely as a defensive move, but perhaps to proc that Cephas as well on this fight, which TA does have available if he chooses to play it. Domitrax getting to that 50% mark where the second more dangerous portals will spawn, but they're waiting on the chaotic energy, which is cast right here. You want to make sure that that energy bar is empty going into this phase. It's just much safer. The players wait on it, time their DPS well, get into the shield, and now that they're out of it, they pop Bloodlust for all of the members except for the mage.
Yeah, I'd love being able to see the Bloodlust coming out here onto Domitrax. A lot of times there will be the debate between actually using it on Domitrax or onto the Mephistroth there. I love being, especially as a healer, I love being able to actually have it onto Domitrax. The amount of adds that you have to deal with are greatly reduced here, and you're able to just take the boss down so much more quickly, and especially when you do push Domitrax into that enrage phase where you're just having so much more tank damage to really focus on, really reducing that time period that you have to deal with there. At that point, it definitely makes Mephistroth more of an attrition healer fight, but at that point for Luffy, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Hadrian barely got over to that Aegis at the last second. Took ages to get there. But it is important to note they played that last Mistress, that last Shavara really well. Asphyxiated it. One of the forests is vanished on the side of the screen that we see in the top there, in the top right. But one of them was asphyxiated by the Blood DK as he desperately ran back really quickly to make sure you get in that shield and not get one shot. I won't lie though, even in this 23 Tyrannical setting, you have enough cooldowns as a Blood DK to survive the explosion if worse comes to worse. In fact, we've seen some of the teams do that. The Blood DK opts to sit out with that Vamp Blood AMS, probably IBF from them as well, and just survive it. But no harm done there in the end. They do finish the boss off and are now pulling the last 4 bats, which will easily give them the remaining 3% that they need for the dungeon, after which, of course, will spawn Mephistroth, the final boss of the dungeon.
Yeah, and at this point, you know, Domitrax is down to 20% here for Limit, and like we talked about earlier, you know, they still need about 2% left on the trash percentage because it will not be enough from the bats that they are killing there. So it might be just a little bit of a miscalculation or some kind of trash effect that they missed out on, but Omegasniped is in a very strong position here. 2 battle reses available for both teams, and while there is that 3 death differential, Omegasniped is quite a bit more ahead.
Yeah, quite a bit ahead too, and I mean, yeah, they have the 15 seconds in favor for them, but that's easily just overtaken by the fact that they're just going to be missing trash percent. They're going to need to head back so far, so this is a really big problem for Limit. Team Omegasniped is just going to have to wipe at this point flat out for Limit to really have any chance to catch up at the moment. Mephistroth does get pulled finally, does have 40 seconds in this first round of Phase 1, as he will start his energy bar, somewhere around 50-60 energy, before going into Phase 2, where the tank, usually, will be responsible for using the Aegis in order to protect the ever-blind Illidan in the middle of the room, Jack.
Yeah, very important there. You also will be having the Spires coming out onto 2 ranged targets, and if they are not able to have any ranged targets, they will, of course, prioritize some of the melee here. So in this situation, when you're having the double Windwalkers and you're having Jeeth on the Holy Paladin there, you will end up having at least some kind of melee player every single time having to go out of melee, stop DPS, and actually run those out. So that can be kind of detrimental here, but we have seen a very large disparity between Luffy and G the Bell and the huge damage that Jeeth is able to provide constantly, whereas Luffy has been playing a lot more on the safer side here.
No, I haven't seen any form of MC or control. I don't even know if there's any undead who can control in this dungeon on the side of Limit. So they are at 99% now for trash. As we said earlier, that could be a big problem for them and is a big problem for them. But they are as well on Mephistroth right now, trying to do what they can as they're about to enter their first transition Phase 2. But Team Omegasniped on the main screen has just come out of that phase right now and are ready to re-DPS in this first phase. Should be able to finish the boss here with this full Phase 1, which is well beyond 40 seconds before they transition to yet another transition phase. Limit has used their Bloodlust on that. We do have a death going down on Jeeth the Bell, immediately getting that res up, but that's another 5 seconds on the clock, time that they preciously need at the moment.
Yeah, they really need to be able to hold on to any kind of death advantage that they possibly can here. As you're seeing Zyronic and, of course, Fired Up staying close in together here, making sure they're dropping, of course, any of their Spires very close by, and staying in close range, of course, for the healer there, making their life a lot easier. And you're also seeing Zyronic moving away. I like being able to see that. He's moving away from Fired Up, not causing both of them to move there. Those are the plays you really want to be able to see, and especially when you're able to allow Zongo just to be able to put all of his damage into the boss here. 15% left on Mephistroth as Limit, and of course, just breaking out of their first intermission phase.
Yeah, 13%, 12, I mean, just rapidly falling right now, 10%. I can't even talk fast enough to keep up with the percentage as it drops. Team Omegasniped looking in a prime position to take the rest of this match. There's only going to be 10 seconds on the clock for Limit to wrap this up. With 32% on Mephistroth, I think that is just a dream at this point, and I believe that's going to be all Strout, not to mention the 1% of trash that they're unfortunately missing.
We talked about this coming into this map. had Team Omegasniped potentially also been someone that had been practicing this map, and it looks like they've got the long game in mind as well. Either that or they are just freakishly good at this map, because Limit definitely had by no means what I would consider a poor performance.
No.
It just looked like Team Omegasniped just came in and kind of outplayed them.
Yeah, they just had a great strat going in. I think they saved a lot of time with skipping some of that Nalasha trash, going to the side of those enforcers that usually don't award percent, not dealing with that orb cast or just a bunch of extra damage to deal with. It's totally possible they got some of the sanguine there too, but you already saw them at the very end of that dungeon just 180ing right